guys, welcome back to yet another episode of the JUSTUS podcast. I'm here with Fred and Top 26.
Hello.
And this time we'll be talking about franchises that are not quite familiar from some of us. So this will consist of the first Harry Potter movie, the JJ Abrams, mostly JJ Abrams Star Trek trilogy, Turtles Forever, with a potential discussion on the 2003 series because that's one we like the most, and Sponge on the Run, the latest Spongebob Squarepants movie, which will consist of discussions on the first two movies.
Okay, should we begin with the Philosopher's Stone?
Yeah. As always, we go from left to right with these sort of topics. But that being said, wasn't it called Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone?
Oh, I made a direct introduction Spanish. I don't know.
Well, it's like one of those things, kind of like how Amazing Spider-Man 2, some countries called it Rise of Electro, even though I don't think that was called that in the US.
I really have no idea, but...
Well, here it was La Amenaza de Electro. Something like that.
Nice name. Like, honestly,
Yeah,
Menace
right.
sounds
It
cooler
was the
than Rise.
Sorcerer's Stone.
And we're ironically talking about Spider-Man and not Harry Potter, so I'm going to say this right off the bat. I'm not a huge Harry Potter expert. Honestly, this felt like a cherry-pick sort of situation in terms of topics. But that being said, what do you guys think of the first Harry Potter movie?
For me, I'm not a big fan of Harry Potter, but I like the franchise. I'm gonna be honest. Seeing that movie was like an introduction of a new world that I never seen at that time. It was great. Yeah, I like the characters. It was an entertaining movie, but then I'll never see that again in my life. It was just a good movie. In my opinion.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Nothing like amazing, but it was very very interesting.
That comment you said about Harry Potter being like this new world, I can agree with, because when I was younger, there's been a lot of franchises that I've seen for the first time, and I'm pretty sure you guys can relate to it as well. I mean, I was mind blown when I discovered stuff like Power Rangers and Spider-Man and Star Wars and all these other cartoons, because they're all different. Like, tonally,
they all
visually,
do a perfect job on creating a world, That is what always Captain does.
Yeah. Especially considering how we go from a fairly more casual home from the opening, as far as I can remember, to this more mystical sort of environment with Hogwarts.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to go all in yet, but the Sorcerer's Stone has this third act that I think it's one of the top 5 moments of the whole franchise. But yeah, I don't know if I should go right there, right now.
Yeah, if you want.
I mean, that third floor of Hogwarts, with the dogs and the chess play, that whole sequence, just so good. The first introduction to Voldemort. I mean, the movie was so childish up to that moment, and it is also a very long movie. But then you get there, and it just turns so dark. Everything. So
that's kind of like the mindset I get as well.
And they are so young. At that time, the actor, little child, and it was traumatizing.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, and I guess maybe you can relate with them. It's like it could be me or someone,
Yeah.
Is it gonna be like that one
adventure
meme?
will be great.
Is it gonna be like the one meme where you have this sort of Wojak looking guy that looks at someone that's totally different from them and they say that's me?
Yeah.
That's me. That's me.
Yeah. Like, I get the idea of Harry Potter. I mean, you can definitely see this as like a child prodigy story, but honestly, the way the characters look at the time makes me think this was something from the 80s or 90s where all this fantasy stuff was around, because most of the franchises that were around that I can think of were more high tech, more advanced, more action oriented. I
Mhm.
mean, like, for example, like X-Men and Spider-Man fit in perfectly within the 2000s, whereas Harry Potter feels more like a thing from the 90s.
Oh well,
Yeah.
yeah. That's something about the books, I guess. I'm not a fan of the books, or well, never read a book of Harry Potter. But I guess it's it's on that place, in the 80s, maybe in that time, I guess. Or I
Yeah.
don't know. Well, maybe I'm
Yeah, it
wrong.
would make more sense to see it from the book.
Yeah,
But mostly these adaptations try to be more modern. I agree that maybe Harry Potter doesn't feel that modern, more
Maybe not like
traditional.
visually, but more so tonally. Like,
Yeah.
it's just weird to describe because I definitely get like the tone of the other examples I mentioned. Although this definitely does give me the vibe of like a franchise that's aimed at kids. It has action to it. Like, honestly, it's like how people would view Power Rangers, where yes, it's a series made for kids, but like it has characters that are young that go through a lot of adventures, although it's different. Another example would probably be um, Galador, as weird as that is.
I don't know.
Possibly, yeah. But you have giant robots, giant creatures with Power Rangers.
Yeah, and here
Yeah,
it's all just like magic.
It is very different, very different.
Yeah, but they have the core premise of youngsters involved with big adventures, and they face a bunch of ugly motherfuckers.
Oh yeah, very.
Honestly, like the only Harry Potter book I ever read was The Audacity of This Bitch, and I gave it a 10 out of 10.
Well, so yeah, the Sorcerer's Stone, like the basic, typical first movie, but at the same time, just so nostalgic, And
yeah, of
I
course.
don't think I don't think specifically our generation grew up identically with character, but it is pretty close.
That being
Yeah,
said,
pretty
I at
though,
close.
least feel it like
I
that.
am honestly more interested in the sequels than I am the first movie. Like,
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
random fact, but when me and my friends in like middle school were watching a clip of Master Chief elbowing Voldemort real hard in a viral clip, like I was more invested in that version of Harry Potter because maybe it's just the fact that he's like less likely involved with that sort of childish world and he's matured, he's more experienced. That's just me.
Wait, are we going to talk about the whole franchise or only the first two movies?
no, just the first one.
Yeah,
Just the
I
first
only
one.
brought up like the recent stuff as an example of why I'm more interested in that. Though maybe that's for another day regarding the actual thoughts on the films themselves, because
Yeah,
I'm just using like the more recent HP films as why I might be interested in those ones, but not so much the earlier stuff because
Hmm.
like it's kind of like going from something childish and whimsical to something that's a little more heavy in story, if that makes sense.
It is like that.
Yeah, kind of like if Harry Potter took notes from something like Lord of the Rings and realized how to make a more interesting story. And I say that knowing an HP fan bigger than any of us would probably go after us in the comment section down below. Hopefully not.
I'm still getting mad, but
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't compare it with Lord of the Rings
no.
Yeah, like
because it's just that first of all it changes tonally so much because up until I think the fifth they keep diversifying both with their tone and their direction, so
Yeah,
it's complicated.
yeah, I suppose that makes sense.
But I think it was Chris Columbus first direct.
Interesting.
And yeah, he was mostly inspired, the old movies like Gremlin, those that
Yeah.
were very 80s.
Yeah, I definitely get like the way ET works kind of reminds me of Harry Potter in some ways, or the way Harry Potter works reminds me of ET.
Yeah, exactly. Another
Like
example.
like you can honestly like replace some of the characters, put them in their outfits, and the actors would honestly fit in with ET, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Whereas Lord of the
I hope
Rings
I hope we
feels
never get that crossover.
Yeah.
whereas Lord of the Rings feels a little more distinct visually, like in terms of outfits, in
Mhm.
terms of aesthetics, the world it's in.
Yeah, much more consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone feels like it's just one of those films that we brought in because we needed something to talk about, and well, it can hang out with us, I guess. Like
Filler topic.
it's like the sort of like guy that wants to hang out with us just because it needs friends, and Harry Potter needs friends desperately. So I think, oh, all right, you can join us for today. But remember, don't go in the car seat. That's ours.
We
Yeah.
are pretty limited. First movie is an introduction,
Yep.
but you can already see that three of the three kids are very talented. I don't know where the fuck they found their
Yeah.
Yeah. Like these guys actually pulled it off. I mean, maybe if they weren't if they didn't like put much effort or emphasis in the story, maybe the film wouldn't have been that interesting. But hey, at least they made it look less like it's some sort of story about a kid that is in this otherworldly sort of thing and hangs out with other weirdos, and is more so just a believable story. This cast honestly saved the story for me. Like they were what kept me a little interested in Harry Potter because
Yeah.
at least the actor that played Harry Potter and so on and so forth with the other kids actors felt more natural for the story, not so much like some sort of fans or like some kids that they
Yeah.
pulled out from like a toy commercial involved. And that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I never knew the names of the actors up until I was older. When I was younger, just those fictional names. You couldn't mention
Yeah, I couldn't.
how they're fictional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't pronounce the last name of Daniel Radcliffe
Radcliffe.
from
Radcliffe.
Radcliffe, right?
Rickly
Yeah.
Rickly. That sort of sounds like the name of one of the aliens from Lilo and Stitch, the Cyclops. That sort of like reminds me of Mike Wazowski.
Yeah.
Mike Wazowski sounds more like a Russian name.
I like that
Yeah.
name. And then we're talking about Monsters Inc. and Lilo and Stitch instead of Harry Potter. I feel bad for inviting the kid over. He's going to be neglected and
I
shit.
can talk about another thing. I think the best cameo from Daniel Radcliffe in BoJack Horseman, and I don't even think that the actor actually playing. Maybe I don't remember.
Probably. One thing I can confirm, though, is that I do have some memories of Harry Potter, such as seeing a poster of it at GameStop many years ago when I was a wee little lad at Fort City Mall when it used to be good. There was also, well, I already mentioned the commercial that had Master Chief in it. There is
Yeah.
even like
Epic.
there's a Lego Harry Potter game which I think we have on our Xbox 360, but it's been a while since I've checked it
I
out.
never played it.
Like it's weird because I was honestly more interested in like the more science fiction oriented Lego games instead of the more real world based games. I mean, the only one that I liked the most was Indiana Jones, whereas I didn't care much about Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Batman were my shit back then. Whereas Harry Potter and
You're not that much romantic.
I'm interested in dramatic stuff now. It's just that at the time I was mostly into those three franchises for Lego, whereas Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean were like, yeah, I'm excited. I'll try them out, but not as invested as I am with the other three franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Oh, and there's also a memory I had where a PS1 demo disc that I somehow own has a trailer for the Harry Potter game released on the PS1. Yeah,
Oh,
not much else to say about it other than the fact that it's one of those like novelties I own from collecting PS1 games back then. So yeah, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Sorcerer's Stone is an interesting movie. I'm sure it's not my favorite movie ever, but if you're a Harry Potter fan, I'm sure you'll love it.
All right.
Next up, we're going to be talking about Star Trek, the JJ Abrams trilogy, or at least I think that was a trilogy involved entirely with JJ Abrams as director, maybe? Well, are you guys Star Trek fans?
Not so much, but I love the second one movie. I guess it's Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
yes,
love that
right.
one as well because despite the
yeah.
fact that
I never watched the second one, but the first one really loved. Great reboot.
yeah, the thing about Star Trek is that it's sometimes depicted as a franchise that would only be loved by the most diehard nerds. You know, and a lot of people on the internet post gifs of Professor Picard from Star Trek face palming or doing a funny face.
Yeah.
Like, I almost imagine like either someone on Twitter that knows nothing about Star Trek or a big nerd who goes on forums and like defends Star Trek at any time to basically be involved with this sort of uh franchise or like mindset where everybody thinks that Star Trek is kind of a overly nerdy thing.
Yeah, I think it's given that stereotype, but it doesn't deserve it because it is like Star Wars.
Yeah.
It has the same
But
atmosphere.
whereas Star Wars feels a little
Yeah.
more action oriented, Star Trek is more so just people that are stiff facing each other in a
But
monotone
without
way.
Jedi and
Yeah.
Sith.
I'll admit that Star Wars itself is a little more interesting visually and tonally and whatnot. And we're going to have to save that for another episode. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
this trilogy is
I mean,
interesting.
though.
Yep. But this trilogy is interesting because it's loved by people for being different, for being modern, but it's also hated by people for that same reason.
Old school people.
Yeah, old school people,
Yeah.
like Star Trek is usually associated with people that would say stuff like, prepare to beam me up, Scotty, or I'm going to make an examination of his prostate as Spock, and all that sort of jazz. But Star Trek, I guess, made the characters feel more real.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it did.
Like, it's interesting too because Star Trek is usually seen as one of those franchises with like beep boop control panels in the main bridge of the spaceship, the USS Enterprise. And it's known for like the sort of setting and tone that's very dramatic, yet feels sort of stiff. Whereas Star Trek feels a little more like this reboot of Star Trek feels more character driven.
Also, we have the best Chris out of all of them.
Chris. Who now?
Chris Pine.
Chris.
Chris what?
Chris Pine. Chris Pine.
Yeah.
Chris Pratt?
Pine.
Who? Chris Evans?
Christopher
No.
Robin.
Chris Pine.
Christopher
The best
Nolan.
Chris.
What about Christopher Nolan?
Oh shit. Okay. I think you won.
What about? Well, his last name is
What about
Christensen,
Christopher
but
Waltz?
but yeah,
But you know, you have this game online that it is always between Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, and Chris Pine, and I think I'm missing Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
but none
So, yeah, you
are
always
superior
have to buy.
compared to Jesus Christ. But back to the episode, back to the topic. Like Star Trek's reboot is pretty good overall, I'd say. the first one is basically just an introduction to this new world, getting people used to the mindset that Star Trek's not going to be this sort of stiff franchise. And it works well, I'd say. Like, again, my memories of Star Trek are faint. I know my dad loves the show. I sometimes watch the episodes with him on MeTV as well as a 60s Batman TV show. But I don't know much about Star Trek from the original series beyond just like the gags they make, like the jokes that people make about him. But I do know that Spock is a very emotionless man, and the new Spock here carries that sort of mindset. Yet feels a little more, I guess, natural.
Yeah, that's true.
It does, and I think he's probably the best actor.
Yeah.
Funny
I
that,
agree with that.
in some other videos I made, not related to the podcast, I made Leonard Nimoy say that G1 Galvatron and Sentinel Prime are better than his Spock. Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, Leonard Nimoy's a legend, no doubt about it, but I honestly get more emotion from his Sentinel Prime than I do his Spock.
Yeah.
Like, Sentinel Prime felt, even though people hate him for killing Ironhide, I get the mindset that he's a sort of wise individual, whereas Spock just feels more like a man, like an android of sorts, you know? Not really capable of emotion. You know, that's his character and all, but at least the new Spock balances it quite well.
Wait, that huge betrayal is in the first movie?
Wait, for Sentinel Prime? That's in the third movie.
Yeah, it wasn't the third.
Oh.
But,
I'm so clueless, man.
Plus
I don't know which movie I watched.
yeah, we're talking about Star Trek right now, by the way. Like, the first movie did a good job depicting a new version of the characters that I guess we sort of love and like, or vaguely have an appreciation for. I don't know. Into Darkness is actually not a bad movie. I like Into Darkness the most. In fact,
yeah, me too.
Like, it definitely has like the sort of mindset where it's got elements of Inception, elements of Mission Impossible, elements of Tom Cruise's other films, but it works very well.
Also, Benedict Cumberbatch is an amazing actor, man. I really love his character.
Yeah, like,
that's great.
It definitely steers away from the typical flat, and I hate to use that term disrespectfully, but like, it takes away the way people see the characters from Star Trek and makes it feel a little more human.
Yeah.
Like, it still works very well, again. I especially like the way the battles were made on the ship, because the way Star Trek is normally seen, like, the action is generally considered fairly it is what it is, whereas with this film it definitely feels a little more, I guess, not just impressive visually but also more impactful, because the battle on the Enterprise just felt a little more tense.
No, and I remember it got into my nerves, the movie.
What about it?
I don't know, I watched so many years ago. The third act, it just, I remember it was really tense, really dramatic.
Like, it's kind of weird when you're watching a movie, at one point you sort of like get a shiver in your spine when you see a very tense moment. I mean, an example I could think of was, of all movies, Iron Man 3, when the characters were falling from the sky. Like, for some reason, like, I sort of like I sort of got like chills down my spine for some reason, almost like I was involved with the fall. It's weird.
Dude, yeah. First time you watch Iron Man 3, I think you really love that scene. It's so great.
Like, maybe it's not just me.
You start seeing the flaws.
Yeah, like, it's not just me like praising Iron Man 3. It's just like, that's an example I can think of a scene where a movie starts to feel like, for some reason, makes you feel like you're falling somehow. Maybe it's just when you're like far too focused into the uh, visuals. Like if you put your face too close to a falling scene, then you start to feel like you're falling for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's what you meant when you're talking about the action scene, Tops?
Yeah, third act probably was pretty action packed.
Now, with all that said, what do you guys think about Beyond?
Well, gonna be honest, I thought that Idris Elba will beat him, Benedict Cumberbatch, but he wouldn't. He didn't. He's a great actor, but for me, it was good, but I was waiting for more, but it was great. Yeah, it was good.
I suppose you could say that Star Trek
But it was
Beyond
good.
just felt a little more. I guess felt like this was the best you can come up with because like I'm not so so devoted to the development of the Star Trek series. I know there's a TV show that's going on, but I honestly felt like Beyond felt a little more incomplete in terms of story, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
And also the production of the movie is incredible. All the people, the costumes are incredible. Also all the trilogy,
Oh yeah, I remember the fight between the Squad and Star Trek Beyond. Remember when Squad won Academy Award?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And everyone was so pissed off that Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. And that award was for Suicide Squad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they lost an award to Suicide Squad. I'm pretty sure Star Trek fans were upset about that. They're like, how can a movie like this lose to Suicide Squad? That movie had like a low score on Rotten Tomatoes. Like Buddy, like I'm not a Buddy Boy. I'm not a huge Suicide Squad fan either, but don't let an award upset you immensely. You already have a movie that you might be happy
to appreciate the work done in the movie. Makeup, amazing.
Like honestly though, like it's like odd. Like Star Trek Beyond wasn't a terrible movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that the film, like it is what it is, basically. Like the Star Trek series, as we already established, is not something we're that familiar with.
I understand the way you said, man.
At least
I feel that.
what they did was still worthwhile nonetheless, because people could easily say stuff like that this series of Star Trek films is like poopy trash compared to the totally awesome original version, which felt very stiff. Yet this new Star Trek series is not bad. Now, does that mean I'm going to watch everything else involved with the Star Trek series that's been made since Beyond? Probably not, but
Probably not.
I give this several soft spot for it nonetheless. And I give this series I recommend it, even if I'm not a big fan of it, though.
Yeah.
Next up, we'll be talking about Turtles Forever and maybe discuss the 2003 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. All right.
Well, as gonna be honest, I'm not a big fan of the Ninja Turtles, but I guess
Get out.
I
Get the
can.
fuck out.
Well,
I'm going to say this right off the bat. Like,
not gonna lie, man.
This version of the Ninja Turtles from the 2003 series are my favorites of the entire series. Like, the thing is that it's hard to compare apples to apples or apples to oranges, rather, but the thing is that most turtles are either too cutesy or too serious. Like the 87 cartoon and the 90s movie Ninja Turtles were far too cutesy. Like you can't really take them that seriously. Especially with the eyes.
Wait.
Actually, no. I'm actually wrong. Like the 1987 Turtles did mature over time when the series progressed.
Yeah. I remember that show. That show was
like the 1987 guys went from like campy, cartoony, toy-driven series to a more mature series before all went downhill with like Turtles in Mutation or whatever, the Saban brand, like the Saban version that you may remember crossing over with Power Rangers in space.
Oh,
But like aside, like unless the Ninja Turtles matured, then you can't really say that the 1987 guys were that like you can't really take them that seriously unless they were older in the later parts of the series, like seasons 8, I think. The 90s movie turtles are kind of well, they have like the same level of expressions as you'd expect from a puppet, like a animatronic puppet.
yeah.
I mean, a little more expressive than say Barney or Elmo, but still not that expressive nonetheless. And of course, parents made the movie censored, so no swords, no weapons, even though the turtles use their weapons.
It looked cheap. It looked very cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of movies made at a time where they are based on like a cartoon or a kid's toy franchise. Then they make a movie because they think they're hot stuff, when in reality, it's only good for like the generation that grew up with it, but otherwise, there is better alternatives, which we'll get to in a moment. Like the 2003 series, I find to be the perfect balance. Although I will say that
Yeah.
certain
It
episodes,
Yeah,
was
that's
better.
true.
like Fast Forward and I think Back to the Sewer, were kind of deviated or hated for like betraying the aspects of the 2003's initial seasons. 2012 Ninja Turtles were all right. I liked them, but
Yeah.
they weren't
Fine.
like my ideal takes on the Ninja Turtles. Although I do appreciate that they
Do
made,
not mind it.
like, I appreciate that they made Donatello have a little bit of a tooth problem with his voice. The Michael Bay Ninja Turtles I like, but they're way too aggressive. Like, that makes sense. Like, I like them. Don't get me wrong,
Well,
but they're not my
okay.
ideal turtles.
In my case, I don't know why, but every time that I saw that movie, the first one, I guess it was on 2013, I guess, or 14, the
Yeah,
Yeah,
first
around
movie.
there.
yeah.
Yeah, around there. I don't know why, but every time I watch that movie, it made me a very hard headache. I don't know why,
Must be
but
because of the
every time that I saw,
must be because of
yeah,
the. I thought they were fighting on a boat, by the way, but they were fighting on the city at the final battle. And there's also the Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series, which looks a little too deviant-artish, but I appreciate the art style that they made, but not my favorite versions. 2003 is my favorite because it's the best of both worlds. Like, they're cartoony, but they're not cutesy. They're tough, but they're not aggressive looking at the same time.
Dude, they look badass at that time.
Yeah, like no, like 110% agree with you, man. I mean, sure, the 87 Turtles are classics, but they got better when the
yeah.
series got older. Whereas here, the series began strong. On top of that, it's like,
It went. It immediately became serious.
yeah, and it's even a time where a lot of cartoons from, uh, was it for kids, like Kids WB or whatever the fuck they call themselves back then? Like they were infamous for censoring anime. Like they
Oh, Fox. Yeah.
Fox Kids.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure because you guys were in different countries, you had different channels. But I remember Fox Kids being dead by the time the series popped up.
Oh,
Yeah, in the U.S., Disney bought Fox Family Worldwide, and that was why we got Power Rangers in the Disney era. Whereas we like something like Ninja Turtles was somewhere else. For example, it was on Kids WB. But like it was a good show. Like whereas a lot of anime was censored for stupidest of reasons. For example, I remember they edited out Naruto of all characters stabbing himself, so they replaced it with him with his juice box in his hand. Yeah, I'm honestly surprised. Like,
So
I think this is the mindset that a lot of like American weebos have when they act like American cartoons are trash when Japanese anime is better just because they found like Naruto having a boner over his hot female
Yeah.
character. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 2003 series I like because they didn't feel censored. Like they felt consistently made in terms of the tone. Plus, TMNT 2003 also had a great story. I like the characters. The theme song itself was pretty kick-ass. I mean, it's catchy. It's like freaking badass. And it felt like the embodiment of the 2003, along with Ninja Storm and whatever anime was pretty edgy, tough. I think Transformers Energon had good music, but that show wasn't that good. But now we went along with 2003 Ninja Turtles, the show itself, before we even talked about the movie. So, what do we think about the movie?
Oh yeah, Turtle Forever.
Yeah.
Wasn't like the first multiverse attempt.
Yeah. Basically,
I
the
don't know.
1987 Ninja Turtles popped into the world of the 2003 guys. And from there, they talk about stuff such as like the DNA that's like the fluids that alter someone's DNA and make them more animalistic. And and that's what the 2003 villains are after. The 1987 Turtles got caught up on the act. They got captured. The 2003 guys saved the 1987 guys. And from there, they get like a huge contrast of tonal differences. The 87 Turtles were pretty campy. Their voices were different. They were more kiddie. I mean, how do I say this? Like, the 87 Turtles remind me of Franklin the Turtle from Nick Jr. in terms of how they look. Whereas
the Turtle Man.
Whereas like the 2003 guys feel more like they feel like a little more natural in terms of how they look or what they're supposed to be. Like they even make fun of the fact that the 87 guys have their first letters, like the first names letters on the buckles, which we don't make fun of with Superman having an S on his chest, but we make fun of the Turtles for having their first names letters on their belt buckles.
Oh, they used to have that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, from time to time, their eyes look different. The 87 guys have their eyes, like their like pupils are visible, which makes them a little more cartoony. Whereas the 2003 guys have like the standard Batman sort of white eyes, where it's just the white eyes. I like that better for the Turtles because it makes them feel a little more intimidating. It gives them that certain style to it as well. I think that's the aside from that, in the Mirage comics, I think no other series had the white eyes, though I might be wrong. Like it works well. It makes sense because they're meant to look cool, and like I'm honestly okay with the fact that if they were to go back to the sort of mindset. I mean, I know the 2012 series used like the white eyes, but it's only for like the more comedic scenes or when a character starts to get serious. But here, white eyes all the way.
It would go really white in the eyes, right? When it became.
Yeah, when they got pissed off at Mikey for fucking up. We also get Shredder from the 1987 series along with Krang show up. And I also got to say, it's very interesting to see how they were pretty faithful with the animation for the older guys. Like, they fit in with, like, okay, like, they're animated differently, but they still feel like they belong from the animation cells of the past. You know? 87 Michelangelo feels like 87 Michelangelo. Classic Shredder feels like classic Shredder. Classic Krang, so on and so forth. Which is something I can't say the same for when it comes to the Turtles Forever version from the 2012 series, where they made them out of Flash animation and it looked pretty bad.
The Turtle Forever movie, I think it never broadcast.
Which one? 2009 or 2012?
2009.
That's weird. I know it was like in the CW in the US, but like it's weird that they didn't bring it over. It's uploaded for free on YouTube because thank you YouTube.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, like that's why I was able to see it on YouTube, and like I was very
Oh,
happy
really?
with it. That's why I wanted to bring it up for this episode. I haven't seen the 2012 series yet, or the 2012 series versions of Turtles Forever, but I do know that the 87 Turtles are animated via Flash, where they try to make it look like the classic series, but it's like how they animate the new Arthur episodes. They look like puppets, or they move like weird, like stock animation sort of puppets, nowhere near as nicely as the original Arthur episodes.
Yeah. Flash animation is. I think it's only good when you completely dominate. Otherwise,
I think it works best when you make like a brand new series that's never had
yeah.
a previous style, whereas something like Arthur doesn't benefit from Flash, and the same can also be said for Ninja Turtles when they did the crossover. Like, it just feels cheap, nowhere near as nicely made as the 87 Turtles were in Turtles Forever. But back to that Turtles Forever series that we're talking about, or movie, Shredder decides to look for his own counterpart from the 2003 series after his encounter with both teams. And he finds out that Shredder is an alien in this universe, which, I kind of forgot about. Like, I was surprised that this Shredder was an alien. Like, wait a minute. What happened to you, Shredder? Then I realized that he was actually like that in the series. But, like, even though he is an alien that relies on disguises and his metal suit, which looks badass, by the way, at least the design of 2003 Shredder, when he was an alien, at least looked fairly intimidating, like in terms of cartoon standards, if you know what I'm saying. But he's not bad compared
Mhm.
to how people would make him think. So the villains come together, i.e., Shredder's daughter from the 2003 series. Then we get into more serious stuff as the 2003 Turtles try to help their team come back home, yet things go awry when the 2003 Turtles lair gets invaded by the villains with new monsters, I guess you could say, or rather foot soldiers, which are different from the original drones of the 87 series. The Technodrome has also been redesigned as well. Like, it's more ambitious and less toyetic, if you ask me. And it's kind of funny seeing like the 87 villains get their stuff thrown away while the 2003 guys replace everything. And of course, the both teams escape, whereas their Splinter is currently kidnapped. And of course, the turtles realize that they must go back to their world upon realizing the fact that Shredder from the 2003 series wants to wipe out the entire turtle universe. To stop that from happening, they have to go look for Turtle Prime, the original Turtles dimension, which is actually the Mirage comics.
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah. Remember the Mirage comics from the past?
Yeah, a little bit
yes,
of
no.
them.
It's the classic, right?
Yeah, like the originals.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people
Yeah.
from the 80s are more used to the campy, nostalgic cartoon, the Mirage comics are their first bitches. And I use the term bitches in a positive sort of way, in a politely way as well, so we don't get upset in the classic Turtles fans. But, anyways, they team up because they gotta make sure that Shredder doesn't destroy the entire Turtle multiverse. And it was a pretty crazy idea overall. I mean, both the classic world and the modern world were wiped out, and the same was about to happen to Turtle Prime. However, as it turned out, 2003 Shredder's daughter didn't want anything bad to happen to the turtles because she knew that if they were dead, so the entire universe be dead. And it was able to stop Shredder from taking over the world and wiping out all of the turtle multiverse's, well, heroes and whatnot. And the movie ends with the new Shredder dead and everyone coming back to their own homes, which, you know, I'm pretty sure some fans might have hated this movie because it depicted the 87 Turtles as, like, stupid kids. But I enjoyed it nonetheless, just to see what it was like to have different Turtle universes team up.
The movie I do remember watching when 2000. Do you remember the movie from 2007?
Yeah, I think that one was like a sort of sequel to the older movies.
Oh, really?
Kinda, yeah. And it was 3D one, CGI.
Yeah, it's weird.
2011, right?
2007. Like, I remember the
Oh,
movie, but at the
2010.
same time, I don't. Because if I wanted to watch something Ninja Turtles, it was mostly like the 2003 series or the video game based on that series with my cousin. But, like, I don't remember that movie as much as I did. Maybe it's just the fact that I was more invested in Spider Man 3 and Transformers 1.
Yeah, it was probably that. I do want to say that in that movie, there is the thing they do better than anything else. Great.
I see.
It's the part where they show this duality between Raphael,
Yeah.
Oh, already
Leo.
find pictures of the movie. Yeah, I remember that.
Thinking
Sorry to
about it, I
interrupt.
honestly like get to see the mindset of it because Raphael's like the more hot-headed of the turtles. I mean,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Mikey's the party dude, Leo's the leader, of course, and Donatello's a genius. So it makes sense that you'd definitely see that sort of thing with Raphael because of his character portrayal. Like, still, the fact that it was made like as a sequel of sorts to all the other like the first three movies from the nostalgia era of the 90s was weird.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he was this sort of like, oh yeah, I get to see why. It's because of like the fact that they split up, which is kind of why people didn't care about it because they thought it was like some sort of weird reunion. Yeah, I definitely need to give that movie a rewatch because I've sort of remembered there's some things that I kind of don't appreciate back then, but I do now. But back to Turtles Forever, as weird as this segment was, because we went back and forth on what to talk about and whatnot, I got to say that this movie itself was pretty nice overall, and I love me some 2003 Turtles. I want to check out the Mirage Studios comics, and I also want to check out the more story-driven episodes of the classic Ninja Turtles because, as we said earlier, the initial seasons were kind of cartoony and campy, whereas the newer stuff was not only better handled, but also better animated too. And finally, we'll be talking about the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, which is kind of interesting because, well, let's just say that we're going to have to first talk about the other movies before we talk about this one. So, you guys have seen the first SpongeBob movie, right?
Yeah.
The first movie is amazing, fantastic, phenomenal. It should have ended there. I'm sorry, but it should have.
Yeah,
But it's okay.
like
We got gems later on, but it should have ended with the movie.
I'll say this, like I'm sure a lot of SpongeBob fans need no introduction to this movie because it's pretty much a defining moment for not just the series but also the character. It feels like a season finale of sorts, even when you consider the fact it was supposed to be. But what I like about this movie is the fact that it feels more invested in the story and the characters than just a brand name. A lot of cartoons based on the kids franchise, like the '86 Transformers movie, the 1995 Power Rangers movie, the classic Turtles movies, as we established, and a couple of other movies based on cartoons, like those didn't feel as invested in the story as much as the SpongeBob SquarePants movie was, because more than just like a lot more happens in the film than just like the typical stuff you see in the cartoon itself. And compared to a lot of Nickelodeon movies made at the time, this feels more ambitious but still fulfilling at the same time. You guys have seen the Rugrats movie, right? Or if was there any movies for other
I have.
Nicktoons? Like the Rugrats films just feel a little less like something you'd watch from time to time. They just feel more like something you need to see, but then not see again unless you're really into Rugrats.
Yeah, they are not that memorable.
Yeah, no. Well, and
I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen Rugrats in Paris and Rugrats Gone Wild, or whatever it's called, when it first came out, but not so much anymore. Jimmy Neutron, A Boy Genius, which I would love to talk about at some point because that's a movie that's actually good.
yeah,
Yeah, but isn't the
Yeah, but like the thing is, though,
Jimmy
is that
Neutron movie the actual beginning?
yeah, that's the beginning, but
Yeah.
like that's the beginning of the series, which is different from
mhm,
SpongeBob. But it felt a little more invested in the story beyond just like the idea of look, it's a kid. It's like this little kid with a big brain.
Yeah, the chicken dance.
Yeah, we'll talk about that movie next year, everybody. And of course,
mm,
there was also Hey Arnold, which I haven't seen that one, even though I I have a soft spot for the series itself, but it just feels more like a
I think the
TV film. In
movie's
fact, like
overhated.
most of the films that we've talked about, aside from Jimmy Neutron, feel like TV films. But SpongeBob feels a little
Yeah.
more better put together, shall we say? Like
Yes.
like we said, we
yeah,
established that the characters are the main focus, but it also feels like an award of sorts for watching the entire series. It's more than just SpongeBob
It
going to
is.
Hollywood.
Very rewarding.
It's SpongeBob being recognized by not just the kids, but by everyone else for being this successful character. And the story itself did a good job of depicting SpongeBob basically going to the top when he wanted to prove himself as a worthy individual to Mr. Krabs. I mean, he got upset that he wasn't a manager, so he went on this adventure to save the Krusty Krab when King Neptune showed up and accused Krabs of something he didn't do by stealing his crown. The story itself just felt like a fun adventure. Sure, kind of kiddie, but at least it was mainly about SpongeBob doing a big thing that no one else was willing to do because he was a hero.
The thing with that movie is that all the characters are at their prime, so just perfect.
Yep. Although Neptune and his daughter Mindy are inconsistent with the cartoon's own King
Oh,
Neptune and his son
alright.
Triton,
Yeah, they're very different. But I appreciated change.
plus Plankton was actually the one that won for the most part. Like the fact that he
Oh,
took over the
yeah.
Krusty Krab
mm,
was so freaking good. And it started off slowly at first. Like it went from Plankton going from saying, "Hey, look, I got the Krusty Krab formula," to then saying, "I'm going to take over the world and everyone's going to bow down to me." Like that was freaking good. And it further encouraged SpongeBob and Patrick to save the day. And even when they were at like their downest points, like their car was stolen, or they got chased away by a monster with a disguised woman who was part of like the Tongs.
Dude!
Like that was
That
good. Like that
scene
was so good.
fucked up, man.
It was fucked up, but still well made. Like we went from
Yeah.
stuff like Sandy Cheeks. We went from Sandy Cheeks being a monster in Survival of the Idiots to this, and it felt like a huge step in the right direction for SpongeBob's story. On top of that, Now That We're Men was a great song to listen to. I mean, like, it was definitely a moment where SpongeBob and Patrick were starting to realize that they don't have to be afraid of stuff. Like, they can be brave individuals and step
yeah,
forward and save the day. Like, they doubted themselves quite a bit, and it was so nice to see them man up, even without the mustaches made by the seaweed. Like, they were willing to go up against
Yeah.
uh, anything that stood in their way. The monsters didn't scare them. Like, sure, they ran into the bounty hunter, who pretty much wanted to get them killed, but they stood their ground nonetheless.
Yeah.
Sure, they were getting fried by the sunlight when they were out of water, but even at that moment, as sad as it was, they were still willing to stick together as friends because They know this is their last moment together, and if it's going to be the last moment, of course it's not, but if it was, they're going to spend it together as friends one last time.
Oh.
And seeing them with Hasselhoff.
The best appearance ever in any movie, David Hasselhoff. Come on.
Yeah. David
Yeah.
Hasselhoff. Yeah.
And it was just.
Oh my god, it's David Hasselhoff!
Like, it was so good.
Yeah.
Like, it was more than just gimmicks that was in that movie. And of course, we can't forget about the legendary Goofy Goober song at the end when SpongeBob saved the world. And of course, there's also
Ooh, yeah.
the ending when SpongeBob got his manager card. Notion Man played. Like, you can definitely tell that we just went from a kiddie cartoon to a worldwide phenomenon that people have a huge appreciation for.
Yeah.
Like, if there's something that a lot of cartoons don't realize, it's the fact that you got to be more than just a cash cow for your property. You got to treat it like it's capable of doing other things beyond just being a kiddie show, which is something I felt that the Rugrats movies didn't do quite right. Something a lot of movies from the past, like the examples I mentioned, didn't do so well because they were mostly either focused on just being cash cows for the brand or just selling toys. Whereas SpongeBob, yeah, sure, it's a kids franchise, but it still has more to go with it than just being a kids show.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Ocean Man's a good song. For all the people that say that that should have been the ending song for Aquaman, like, shut up. Aquaman doesn't need Ocean Man. Like, this is SpongeBob's song, not Aquaman's. It's just a shame that a lot of other episodes since then were downhill. Like, it didn't seem that way at first, but I think it began that mindset with Good Neighbors being the first episode where I realized that their game was starting to go down. Others like Patrick's Driver License I didn't like. Hiding Then What Happens was terrible. Sharing was the sharing episode, Yours, Mine, and Mine, was awful. And it seemed like things were at a final straw with SpongeBob You're Fired, which was garbage. But that being said, Sponge Out of Water was a pleasant surprise. A very, very big surprise.
I don't know. I think when I watched it, the thing that makes it like different is that, you know, with voice actor, they usually change here. When,
Oh yeah.
But like,
instead of faithfully keeping those shows, they usually change. But I think that will.
yeah, what I like about Sponge Out of Water is the fact that it's basically a redemption point for the SpongeBob franchise. We went through a couple of seasons that were pretty bad, and now we see why they were bad because the production team was focused on making a movie that was meant to be an apology for the fans. At first, I was under the mindset that Sponge Out of Water was going to be this terrible film that only appealed at the bare minimum with SpongeBob fans. It was going to be on par with the bad episodes, but it wasn't. It was a pleasant surprise. Sure, the humor was a little more been there, done that compared to the first movie, but I appreciate the fact that they were changing stuff up. Like the Warzone setting was a nice addition. The fact that they went out of water and did a lot of crazy adventures was a little strange at first, but like it made sense for SpongeBob. The fact that they were going after the Krabby Patty formula was a bit of a breath of fresh air because it's not really plankton that's involved, but it was a pirate who wanted to make his own burgers. On top of that, there was also the storybook that controlled how he would like basically control the plot, so he's kind of a god at that moment. And again, it was kind of like a nice way of changing things up because I think the last time we got a SpongeBob movie between then was like 11 years, give or take. So I do appreciate that they changed up the story. Plus, the way that they added the superhero element was pretty nice. Sponge Out of Water superhero segments, the Spongers was better than Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, and Fantastic. But then it leads us into Sponge on the Run, which, you know, like I was excited to see because SpongeBob was already getting better at this point. Like, sure, the animation might be a little trippy compared to the older stuff, but it's better than the animation they used to have back then, where it felt a little stiff, but like more so than the pre-movie episodes. This was made around the time the Kamp Koral cartoon was announced, and I'm just going to say right off the bat, this movie is a very strange one to watch. Like, maybe it's just the fact that I've seen it once, but I don't get the feeling that it's very consistent with its story. Do you?
No, yeah, I do understand what it looks pretty. So I don't know, but doesn't it go back flashbacks trying to?
It's a strange movie to break down because it tries to be about SpongeBob going after the antagonist. I think he was like Poseidon. I think he was trying to be similar to King Neptune. So aping off the nostalgia of the first movie. There is a Gary is missing story plot. Again, aping nostalgia off of Have You Seen the Snail? It relies on Keanu Reeves, who, can't go wrong with him, but did he really serve much of a purpose aside from just being there for celebrity's sake? I can't really remember.
Yeah.
I feel bad too because I like Keanu Reeves, I like SpongeBob, but yeah, like this movie was just kind of a mixed bag. Like a lot of people ripped it apart just because it was a cash grab. Like they'd say, like this is the worst SpongeBob movie ever. Anyone that agrees with me is going to be sent to hell in Brazil. But
sound like Squidward.
Yeah, Squidward tentacles. But just like I want to love this movie. I really do, but I can't really say it's like the biggest surprise ever because aside from the fact that they're trying to copy stuff we've already seen before, hello, another Krabby Patty story. We also have
It recycles a lot.
Yeah, and we also get the fact that it's trying to tie in with the movie. I'm sorry, not movie, but TV show that they're making.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you guys don't remember, Kamp Koral was a spin-off that's meant to be used for a younger SpongeBob. Now, at this point in time, you can understand why they'd want to do it because they want to try and get people interested in this sort of aspect of the series. Like, you might wonder what they're going to do with SpongeBob because it's been going on for so long. So maybe a spin-off might work. Younger versions of the characters.
Mm.
But, like, why put him in? Like, it just feels like they're not really there for the story, but more so just so you can make it a commercial for this spin-off.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't remember, this spin-off was not really well received at first. I mean, people were against it because it was a cash cow. It was kind of like Muppet Babies. And of course, it's not really a film that, or rather a series idea that Steven Hillenburg would have liked because he was against spin-offs at that time.
Yeah, I hope Stephen wanted to die again.
Well, to say that you want the series to die is kind of harsh, unless, like, it's weird too.
No. I was talking about Stephen. I hope he's in the other world wanted to die again because of.
It's just hard to do because, there's going to be people that will say stuff like, oh, but it's actually going to be good when it comes to the spin-off for the younger SpongeBob series. But, like, honestly, we've known SpongeBob for so long. Why would we even need a spin-off for if it's going to be just a younger version of the character? You know?
Mm.
Like,
they're running out of ideas.
Yeah, maybe.
Plus, we already seen this before with other stuff. Like, I think they made like
Total
a baby
drama.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like, why make a baby version of Total Drama? Like, wasn't that series made for older people?
It was so like it was a teenager kind of show.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's super child, so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. You know, like that one
Yeah,
video,
that.
like that one guy like facing his camera saying, "Weird, buddy. You're weird." It's just
Weird.
like uh, uh, you know, this reminds me of how people ripped apart Batman v Superman when it first came out, saying that it was hard to understand. But like, I understood BVS when it first came out. Like, sure, I had to rewatch it, but I got an idea of what the story was about. Like, it was mainly Bruce Wayne's reaction to the Man of Steel. It was a continuation of Man of Steel. We got to see the world's reaction to it, and the more you saw it, the
Yeah,
more
well,
invested you were.
maybe the main problem is that people they have the intention to, to search for information about this, maybe
Yeah,
rewatch the movie. They just want to criticize, because they don't understand,
or they take their
and
opinions
they
from
have,
somebody else.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but in this case, I'm not going to lie when I say that this is my opinion that Sponge on the Run is just a very odd movie to talk about. Like I said, not awful. A lot of people are saying that it's the worst thing ever. It's my least favorite SpongeBob movie, but it's not garbage. I've seen worse movies
yeah, of course not.
that are sequels that deserve more criticism than this. Lord Ragnarok, Rise of Skywalker, Justice.
Oh, beef.
But Sponge on the Run, not that good. It's just hard to give it much credit. Like, there's good things I like the animation, but I just sort of feel underwhelmed with it, especially considering that last year we had a pretty good birthday episode for SpongeBob, and I guess that would have been better than this thing because at least that had a new story in it. You know, SpongeBob and Patrick go on like a
Mhm.
bus tour. They meet human
Yeah.
versions of their characters, like themselves. Like, sure, like the picture quality of like the like, if you've seen the anniversary episode, and I'm kind of talking weird, but like if you've seen the episode or at least a segment where you see Tom Kenny, I like to see that, but with better picture quality because the sped up segments for when Tom Kenny was dancing look kind of corny. I seen that with bits of Beast
Mhm.
Morphers with Ben and Betty, probably Nickelodeon's camera quality. But like, if we had that series, but with the live action segments done in a fashion similar to the first two movies, as well as uh, the SpongeBob characters in the same animation as Sponge on the Run, I think the birthday episode would have been a better third SpongeBob movie than Sponge on the Run is.
Do sound fortunate.
I just don't feel that happy with the film itself because you already said it, like we already mentioned it before. Like, it looks promising at first, but it's hard to like it as much as I wanted to, and such is life when it comes to that sort of thing. If you ask me,
You know what do I think is a problem?
the fact that it's a commercial for the spinoff.
No, it doesn't have David Hasselhoff.
Well, David
No.
Hasselhoff was already like a huge part of the first movie.
It needs to be in every movie.
Well, he'd be our Stan Lee sort of guy, but that should have been reserved for Stephen Hillenburg, who unfortunately passed away back in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's a legend. On the plus side, they did say thank you to Stephen Hillenburg for his contributions, and that is great. Though that being said, I kind of wonder what he thought about the movie. Maybe he liked it more than we did. I don't know. But
I hope so.
yeah,
Yeah.
I also hope that even if we've been through the ups and downs, like he understands that we will always love the show, even if it's in its worst, because there's always something about SpongeBob that others don't understand that we do. Maybe it's because people are from different generations, but SpongeBob is
Probably.
our Bugs Bunny. He's our Mickey Mouse. He's
Yeah.
sure like he's a meme sort
I
of
think
guy
that's a great
nowadays,
comparison.
but I see him as less of a meme and more of an icon of my past, along with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, Power Rangers Dino Thunder, Wallace and Gromit,
David Hasselhoff.
David Hasselhoff 2, Jimmy Neutron, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, and I guess the Dark Knight trilogy and X-Men 2.
Did I say David Hasselhoff?
Yeah.
Again.
All right. Try and say David Hasselhoff is the best guy ever 3 times and fast. Go.
David Hasselhoff is so hard.
Yeah. And that covers today's episode of the Just Us podcast. Now, with all that said, we hope you guys enjoyed this very interesting attempt at making another short episode. But hey, that's what happens when none of us know much about Harry Potter, know a little bit about Star Trek,
Dude,
know a bit about Ninja Turtles, and are frustrated with SpongeBob.
The attempt more interesting than what we actually did.
Yeah. But that being said, hopefully the next episode will be a little more cohesive. And of course, there'll be some franchises we'll talk about that are pretty interesting, and others we might rip a new one. We'll see. And after that, will be a very special episode, which, if you've seen us on Twitter, you might be aware of. But you might already give hints about it already. So, hope to see you next time on the Just Us podcast.
Roll the music.
It's already rolling. Post-production stuff. But, yeah. Until next time, take care.